Good evening, dear friends. You're welcome back to the channel. I hope you're enjoying the content. Please remember to like and share our content. That would encourage us with the work we are doing so that we can do better. Now, today we are going to discuss the factors that affect microbial growth. Factors that affect microbial growth. Now, microbial growth we know has to do with proliferation of cells. We know that when microorganisms grow, it means that many more cells are being produced within the medium or within whatever place the microorganisms are growing and dividing in. Now, there are certain factors that affect microbial growth. That is, they help microorganisms to divide and grow faster, or they could inhibit their growth. Now, for the purpose of this class, we will just quickly discuss about 8 factors that affect microbial growth. Now, the first factor that affects microbial growth is nutrients acquisition, or nutrients, the presence of nutrients. Now, microorganisms, they make use of a lot of nutrients, both macronutrients and micronutrients. So they make use of a lot of carbon, a lot of hydrogen, a lot of nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus. These are macronutrients, and they also make use of trace nutrients in minute quantities. So when you have large or presence of these macromolecules, this helps the microorganisms to grow and divide very rapidly. But when nutrients are scarce and not readily available, this decreases the rate at which the microorganisms grow. Secondly, we have temperature. Temperature affects microbial growth. The higher the temperature, a lot of microorganisms find it difficult to grow and proliferate under high temperature. Now, because microorganisms are organisms that are widely successful in different ranges of environment, they're actually able to conquer different ranges of temperature. Now, we have what we refer to as sarcophiles, and these are microorganisms that are able to exist under in conditions of low temperature. So these are sarcophiles. We also have what we refer to as mesophiles, which are microorganisms that can grow in normal room temperature and body temperature. So these are called mesophiles. We also have microorganisms we refer to as thermophiles. These are microorganisms that grow in high temperature, temperatures from above 60 to 100. You still have microorganisms that can grow and thrive under such temperatures. So those kind of microorganisms, we refer to them as thermophiles. So temperature also affects microbial growth. The third thing that affects microbial growth is pH. pH, we know this has to do with acidity, the level of acidity, neutrality, or alkalinity of a medium. Now, this affects microbial growth. There are microorganisms that love acidic medium, and we refer to them as acidophiles. We have microorganisms that also love neutral medium, and we refer to them as neutrophiles. And we also have those that like the basic medium or alkaline medium, so we refer to them as basophiles or alkaliphiles. So it's important to know that microorganisms can be found across the different ranges and spectrum of the pH range. So depending on what kind of microorganism, it will be able to grow in whatever that it finds comfortable. Now, the next one is the presence of water or moisture. This is very important for microorganisms. Remember that a lot of enzymatic reactions take place inside microorganisms, and a lot of these enzymatic reactions need water as a solvent for the enzymes. And so this makes water to be very important for the growth of many microorganisms. Many microorganisms are what we refer to as being osmotolerant, meaning they thrive very well in the presence of water. So water is important for their growth. It's an important factor in their growth. And when you don't have the presence of enough water, it stifles or reduces the growth of microorganisms. We also have oxygen. Oxygen is an important factor in the growth of microorganisms. Now, many microorganisms either want to grow or love the presence of oxygen and grow in the presence of oxygen, or they cannot tolerate oxygen. Now, there are different kinds of microorganisms. We refer to microorganisms that tolerate oxygen, grow well in oxygen. We call them the aerobic, the obligate aerobes. So they're able to grow in oxygen. We also have what we call the obligate anaerobes, and the obligate anaerobes are not able to grow or do well in oxygen. In fact, the presence of oxygen, they can't tolerate it and they die, the obligate anaerobes. Now, we also have what we call the facultative anaerobes, and the facultative anaerobes, they are interesting because they don't want oxygen, but they could grow in the presence of oxygen. So they can do well even though oxygen is present, but they don't need oxygen for their growth. Now, we also have what we call microaerophiles. Microaerophiles, these are organisms that want oxygen. They want to grow in the presence of the oxygen, but they want reduced or a little, presence of oxygen. So we refer to them as microaerophiles. And we also say that some oxygens are aerotolerant. meaning that they don't need oxygen also for their growth, but they tolerate oxygen. So this is important to know. It's also important to know that environmental conditions can also affect microbial growth. There are a lot of environmental conditions, the presence of pressure, the presence of radiation, presence of many other factors like that. Pressure, radiation, then even salinity, the presence of salt, or the presence of any salt can affect microbial growth. Now, we know that microorganisms live even at the bed of the sea. So those microorganisms are bearing the weight of the sea, even as they live on the sea floor. So, and they thrive even within this environment. So we look at microorganisms and say that they are barophiles. They're able to tolerate high pressure. Now, you also have microorganisms we refer to as radiophiles, meaning that they're able to tolerate radiation. They grow even in the presence of different forms and levels of radiation. And then you have organisms that can grow in high salt condition. We refer to such organisms as halophiles. They can grow even in high saline conditions. So this is important for us to know. We should also know that another factor that affects microbial growth is competition for resources. When you have a lot of microorganisms of different species and kinds growing within the same medium, there's competition. And in the midst of this competition, it makes it difficult for all the microorganisms within that medium to grow, very well, to grow optimally. So competition for resources is another factor that can affect microbial growth. Lastly, the presence of inhibitors. There are particular substances in nature that can inhibit, they can, stifle the growth of microorganisms, and we refer to them as inhibitors. Some inhibitors include naturally occurring antimicrobial substances or peptides. They can reduce or inhibit the growth of microorganisms. So this is important to note. We've discussed about 8 factors that affect microbial growth, and these 8 factors include nutrient availability, temperature, pH, water and moisture, oxygen. We have environmental conditions, we have competition for resources, and the presence of inhibitors. Thank you for listening to this lecture. Please don't forget to like and share our content. Have a wonderful day.